Okay, here it is, the most requested video I've had all year long. Neil, which countries, counties, cities are going down in this financial housing crisis, and how can I know if my city or my area is going to be hit so I can make the right decision on my housing purchase? Let's get into it. It's been a few weeks since my last housing video. If you haven't watched that yet, I highly recommend you watch that video. It's coming up to 700,000 views already. It's only been out for a few weeks. So you can watch that on my channel, maybe open it up as a new tab, but I'll also link to it at the end so you can watch it at the end of this video. As always, I've been tracking all of this data. You wouldn't even believe the thousands of data points on the housing market in the different countries, by counties, by cities. It's insane. So I've been doing all of that so you don't have to, so you can just relax, watch the video, and then by the end you'll be able to make a decision for yourself on what's going to happen for your area. People who keep commenting on my videos, well, my agent and mortgage advisor told me now is the best time to buy. There's never been a better time. Just stop and think about that for a second. How do they make their money again? This is that point in the video where those dishonest agents and brokers click the dislike button. So do me a favor, guys. If you're enjoying what I'm saying so far, just balance out those dislikes we're going to get. Please hit that like button for me. And if you want more videos, then definitely subscribe. But again, I'm not saying all agents and brokers and mortgage advisors. I'm just saying the dishonest ones. I'm an agent myself, and I'm definitely not advising my clients to buy right now. I'm telling them just wait a few weeks. Let's just see what happens for your specific area, okay? I'm saying for your specific area. Just wait a few weeks and let's just see what happens. We don't want to make a big financial mistake. Okay, so let's get into point number 1 of the video. Mass exodus of major big cities. This will come as no surprise to many of you because I've been saying for years that people will start to move out of the big overpriced cities into the smaller cities and surrounding towns, or in Europe, surrounding villages, because you can have a much better standard of life as we have this increase in remote working, which the coronavirus has just accelerated to a whole new level with the help of technologies like Zoom, so that this is now more commonplace, and I believe it's going to happen more and more and more. I honestly think that now a lot of the jobs that have gone to remote working, probably 25% of those will never go back to working in the office, just because people will prefer remote working. They'll realize that they're saving a lot of money. They don't have to pay for gas for their cars. They're not eating out as much with lunches and meals and the like. And they're probably saving more money by actually working from home. They get to see their kids, their families more. So for some people, this has turned out to be a great way of living. The CEO of Redfin just confirmed my suspicions when he did a recent interview. In that interview, he said that the search traffic, so this was the search traffic online on Redfin, has moved from the major big cities to the smaller cities surrounding these big cities, these work hubs. So this tells us one thing. People are already starting to think about moving out towards the smaller cities.
Americans who are working from home for the first time, 1 in 4 say they're not going back to the office. And half of those people say they're not going to pay the rent to live in New York, San Francisco, or even Seattle. So we expect there will be something close to an exodus from these really large cities where housing is so expensive to places like Charleston or Madison, Wisconsin, or Boise, Idaho. Places where it's just more affordable and you can still walk around town a little bit.
But this has actually been happening for a long time. People have been moving from these big cities, these big tech hubs, out to the smaller towns and cities surrounding them because they know they can work remotely and they have this sort of buying power of them as a salaried employee where they can request remote working. And a lot of these big tech companies have to comply with a lot of these requests because they know if they don't, another big tech company will say, sure, yeah, you can work remotely. We're happy with that and pay you the big salary just so you don't go elsewhere. And when you combine this with the fact that as people get older, they prefer to move out of the hustle and bustle into quieter locations like the suburbs where they know they can get a much better standard of living, a much bigger, nicer house with a front and backyard for the same price that they would be paying for an apartment in a big city. It just makes sense. Whereas we have the polar opposite with the younger generation who want to move from the suburbs, from say villages in Europe, and they want to move into the hustle and bustle, renting apartments in the big cities like San Fran, LA, Houston, London, Sydney, etc. The problem with these moves though, and as the younger generation find out when they make the moves, is that the standard of living that they were used to at home becomes absolutely shocking when you move into a big city. I remember when I left the army in late 2011, early 2012, I was 27 years old. I'd done 10 years of service, so I joined the army at 17 years old. And I rented a room, so this was just a small room in London for £700 per month. So this is equivalent to just less than, say, $1,000 US. And I just remember thinking, why am I sharing one bathroom with 5 other people in this stinking room? And it really was a stinking room with a single pane of glass window, which was freezing in the winter. Oh great, now this dude in the next room just moved his girlfriend in and she's got really long hair. Now I'm never going to be able to get in that bathroom and have a shower. And that's actually one of the reasons why people like me and loads of other people moved to a smaller city. So I moved to a city called Coventry, which is right in the center of England, because I got a much better standard of living. Where I was renting this tiny stinking room for 700, I then got an entire 2-bed apartment for just 500. I was also able to work remotely, which is what I really wanted to do. And if you just do a search term for this, you'll see there's a massive trend right now, working remotely, also known as digital nomads. And since I'd already been a nomad for the last decade, this was nothing new to me and it wasn't a culture shock when I started working remotely. And one thing I can tell you is a lot of military, if you're watching this and you're military, you'll know what I'm talking about here. Once we've had that freedom of traveling the world and moving around to different bases and things like that, going to different countries, we really get that into our blood, and we don't often like to just settle down in one specific place and work in one little office and do that day in, day out. Now, I know some people do because they get fed up of the travel and that's all they want, but I would say the majority like some sort of job where they're able to travel a lot. And people often ask me, Neil, how are you often to travel so much? One week you're in Spain, the next week you're in London, then you're in Thailand, then you're in some other Asian country, now you're in Dubai, now you're in America again. Like, how are you able to travel so much? I honestly believe this will become the norm in the future. Okay, I get that we're completely closed off and borders right now, but just, keep this in mind, make a note of this. Working remotely is going to be a lot more normalized in the future. And this is what's going to also affect housing prices. So to finalize on this point about the mass exodus from big cities to smaller cities or towns, I believe this is going to be the norm in the near future. Point number 2, let's talk about unemployment now then. Last time I taught you that housing crashes are caused by 2 distinct things. Number 1 is rising unemployment, and number 2 is rising interest rates. And right now we have got the absolute perfect storm in terms of unemployment. The unemployment rate is so high, it's insane. So as soon as you see interest rates going up, at the same time we've got high unemployment, that is the time for you to panic. Absolutely just freak out, because that's when prices are just going to crash. And I honestly believe, and I put my name to this, that we're going to see the biggest housing crash in the history of our planet if those 2 things happen at the same time. Okay, let's use Disney as an example now then for unemployment, because Disney seems to be in all the news headlines, not just in California, but all around the world at the moment. Let's look at this LA Times headline, which is, Disney stops paying 100,000 workers, cuts mean 500 million a month in savings. Wow. This is a hugely successful company, one of the most successful and wealthiest companies on the planet. My point is that the majority of these workers are not high income earning salaried employees. They weren't on minimum wage, but they also weren't on high wages either. So guess what? Most of these workers and performers that are at Disneyland and California Adventure and all these other places in Anaheim, California specifically, are not homeowners, they're renters. And since they're not getting paid right now, who's paying the rent to their landlords? Just think about that for a second. And if their landlords aren't getting their rent payments from these workers, then how are the landlords paying the mortgage company? Right now, millions of people are missing their mortgage and rent payments. This is going to have a really big knock-on effect. Next, generations. If you think about the people who buy houses, who do we have? Firstly, we have professionals, couples, families, etc. Then we have landlords wanting to expand their portfolio. And then we have speculators, also known as flippers, who make a profit from houses. Let's take the first group of home buyers then. So these are your professionals, your couples, your families, etc. Because these make up the biggest chunk of the home buyer market. There is currently over 25% unemployment in the USA right now. However, I don't go by the government statistics, I go by Shadow Stats. So it's a good website for you to actually use. And Shadow Stats puts unemployment at over 40% right now. Over 40%, can you imagine that? That's 4 out of every 10 Americans out of work right now. And when you combine this with a restricting lending criteria that's been announced, you've really got a big problem on your hands because you've just taken out of the marketplace one of the biggest chunks of buyers. And that's not even talking about all the people who need to refinance right now. More on that next week. Like and sub below. Next, we have landlords wanting to expand their portfolio. Now, landlords are not stupid, okay? Now, they might not be Wall Street geniuses, but they're pretty savvy when it comes to buying houses as an investment. And I can tell you, because I've got thousands of landlords in my academy, that people are not buying investment properties right now. They are sitting, they're being patient, and they're waiting to see what happens with the marketplace. And I can tell you another thing. 95% of my landlords in my academy and in my agencies, in my housing companies, they all believe, this is over 95%, that we're going to be seeing a reduction in house prices. So all this stuff in the media, 30% of people, investors believe house prices are going down, but 70% believe they're going up. Nonsense, all right? I don't go by all this media stuff. I go by the people who I see and speak to day to day. And by the way, these people, these landlords, they're all around the world in my academy, from Australia right through to the USA and Europe. So that takes another chunk out of the buyer's market. And then let's move on to the flippers then. So these are the housing speculators. What are they doing? Well, flippers make a profit from buying the house lower and then selling it, maybe doing some work, and then selling it, also known as flipping it, later on to make a profit. So they cannot afford to take risks right now. They can't afford to make a mistake, so they're also not buying either, unless they're getting massive discounts of say 20, 30% on the house. But already if this is happening, we already know what's going to happen. If you've watched my other videos, you know what happens when you get 20, 30% discounts. It creates a spiral downwards because other sellers think, okay, I better offer a discount as well, otherwise I'm gonna have my house just sat here on the market while everyone else is selling. Are you starting to see the bigger picture now? You know me, I don't use all the media and stats and things like that. I go by logic, common sense, and what I can see in front of me. Already there's a percentage of houses that never go through to escrow or never go through to completion, as it's known in a lot of the world. I won't go into the percentages because it's different for each country and each county and each city. But right now what we're seeing is just an explosion of houses that are not going through to completion. And again, I could speculate on all the reasons why, but I don't have that data. But just my best guess is because of the unemployment. it's because of the higher lending criteria, and a lot of offers are being pulled, combined with uncertainty with buyers who are worried that house prices might come down or they might lose their job. And this is pulling the certainty from the market. But again, that would just be my best guess. And I was listening to a well-known housing expert. I mean, this guy is super famous on the news this week, and he was saying, there's nothing on the radar. There's nothing to worry about with house prices. The other thing he said was Generation Z, or Z if you're in Europe, are going to save the housing market. They're the ones buying the houses. And again, I don't know what this guy is smoking. I'm sure some idiot has given him a script to read here. Does he not realize Generation Z are 5 to 25-year-old? I don't know if he's thinking of something else. Maybe he's thinking of millennials. Generation Z are 5 to 25-year-olds. Let's just put this into perspective. The average house price in the USA is about $220,000 right now. Let's just use that figure, which means that Generation Z, these 5 to 25-year-olds, again, I keep laughing. I'm just thinking of a 5-year-old buying a house.
Look at my money. I'm going to give you this much. Right here.
But they would need a $40,000, I'm just doing these figures off the top of my head, but they need probably a $40,000 down pay and a $40,000 a year salary in order to afford an average house. What is he talking about? And besides that point, the younger generation are not like the older generation. As I said at the start, the younger generation, they want to get out of the suburbs and things like that. They want to get into the hustle and bustle. They want to have that experience. We now live in an experience age, right? People, they want this experience when they're younger. That's why, think of traveling and backpacking. Why is that so popular? And what age group is it popular? People want to travel when they're younger. They want to have this experience. They want to rent apartments in the bigger cities. This is, the way things are. They always have been this way. People simply don't want to put down roots until they get a lot older. So we could say then the millennial generation could be the ones to save the housing market. But again, if you look at how badly hit the millennials have been with their salaries, it's not like the generations above millennials where people are on very good salaries. They've had these good salaries. Millennials just haven't had that look like the older generations. And I honestly think Generation Z are going to be even worse off, especially people leaving university right now. I really feel for you guys. I'll be praying for you because I think this is going to be really difficult as we go forward. So the big question people are asking me right now then is, are we going into the biggest housing crash on record that our planet has ever known? Well, I personally still think that we are, but that depends upon a lot of changes that would have to happen right now. But, as the expression goes, the train has already left the station. I always like to use the example of a steam train, right? Sometimes people think it's as simple as, like with the economy and housing and things like that, as just standing in front of a steam train and putting your hand up and saying stop. A train can't just stop instantly. It has a very long period of braking. And what we've done with the economy right now, especially the housing market in particular, is we have taken that train and we've just run it into a brick wall, right? That's the only way you stop it like that. We've just run it into a brick wall. And it's going to take a long time for the economy to get going again. It's not just going to, start accelerating 200 miles per hour. Again, it doesn't work like that. So I still think it's going to be a few months, if not 6 months, before we have an accurate forecast because of all the mortgage forbearance and all these other stimulus packages that have been created. I've done some other videos on that. If you want to see some quite controversial subject matter, check those out on my channel. But really one good indication is how the spring and summer goes. In the housing market, the spring and the summer is always the busiest period. It has been since I've been doing housing for a long time. And even when I was in the army, I was doing housing. Bought my first house back in 2005. The spring and the summer is always the time when I don't buy houses. I always wait till around Christmas time because that's when I get them at the lowest prices. So if our spring and summer's bad, we know what our autumn or fall through to winter is going to be like. It's going to be really, really bad. So let me give you a few tips then. If you are a first-time buyer and you're looking for a fairly small, conservatively sized house, I would say you don't really need to worry too much because it doesn't matter where you buy. Even if there is a small drop, these houses are always going to go up in value quite nicely. So honestly, don't panic, don't stress yourself out. If you are going forward with a house purchase, I'd say probably still go forward with it because even if prices do drop and your house does go down in value, it is going to go back up very soon. It might take a couple of years, it could take a few years, but it will go back up, especially with all this stimulus money. Where do you think that stimulus goes to, right? It always goes back into hard assets. So you don't need to worry too much. But if you're looking to buy a larger, more expensive home, I would say personally, if it were me, I would wait. I would just pause on that purchase, because I do think that we're going to have a lack of buyers in this market. And when you've got a lack of buyers, it switches from a seller's market to a buyer's market, so you can get lower prices. So I do think these house prices are going to come down, especially in places like California, where you have, very heavily jumbo loans. So these are over $500,000 or more. Jumbo loans, try getting one of those right now. Good luck to you. And then the big one, which is the USA. I stand by what I said. A lot of counties, a lot of cities, the house prices are going to be coming down, especially where I mentioned in the bigger cities, these house prices will be coming down. But again, house prices will go back up in the US because of all the stimulus money going into hard assets. So if you're in the US and you're trying to predict for your city, the best way to do it, and this will give you a much better prediction than any analyst will give you or forecast, watch my other videos, put this together with these points that I'm giving you. It's really simple. Just write these points down and then look at them and say, do these apply to my area? If they do, then be careful. If they don't, then you're fine. But the worst thing you can do is listen to the media, because I can tell you this is going to be the worst global recession that we've ever seen. Because the biggest risk we have right now is high unemployment in the marketplace, combined with the emotional aspect, which is uncertainty. This is key, uncertainty. Whenever there's uncertainty in anything, people stall making a decision. And this is where the problem comes in. In my next upcoming videos on the housing market, I'm going to be talking about things like the Airbnb apocalypse that's going to be occurring. All these houses and, rentals and things like that, they're going to be hitting the market at the worst possible time, just at the peak when we've got an oversupply. That's my prediction. So if you want to see that video and see all the data on that, just subscribe below. Make sure to like this video as well. I really appreciate that. If you've got a lot of value from this video, please do me a big favor and click like. It really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching today. If you want to see more of my videos, you can just view them on my channel, and I'll see you next time.